you guys. I am down in the basement at the crack of dawn trying to film this video because you guys, it's really hard to film without distraction with everybody being home. So you might hear some beeps and I really hope my husband doesn't come down and walk through because his office is down here. Yeah, these are all my books. And actually, I have more bookshelves around the house because I have been homeschooling for a really long time. But I wanted to make this video because on my last video talking about, supplementary material that you could add to all the packets that schools are sending home uh, with their children. One of my subscribers, actually a couple, and some people in real life asked me to do a video about, well, how do you actually get your kid to listen to you so that you could actually sit through those packets and get through the work without wanting to kill somebody or without wanting to jump out the window your own self? How do you get your kid to listen? And as a homeschooler, I've been realizing for years that that is the true issue. That is the true issue to success. So I want to make that video today. But please subscribe to my channel, you guys, and ring that notification bell so that you know when new content is coming out. So I made a list, you guys, because usually I just fly off the cuff and just share what's on my heart. But in this case, I want to really make sure that I address everything. All right. So as I said, I have 5 children. My oldest is going to be 23 this summer. I have 21, 17, 14, and my youngest is 10. Okay. And for me, what has helped me to feel sane or not sane is my ability to make them listen. And that it really comes with discipline. Okay. What you really have to understand is that that same discipline that you use to get them to take a shower, clean their room, stop hitting their sibling when you're working with them as a parent is that same kind of discipline that you're going to have in school to get them to get through their schoolwork. And we're going to talk about some academic things you might want to understand that you might not be aware of as a parent without having had to deal with this in the past. But the first step is to understand that the discipline is the same. Okay. There have to be consequences when the kid is not doing what you're asking him to do. And I like to use the word consequences because it's really not about punishment per se. For me, when it comes to parenting, it's about helping them to realize and understand that their actions do result in certain things. I think it's a valuable life lesson. So you have to have consequences other than you yelling and going nuts, when your child doesn't want to do what you want them to do. But a lot of people stop there. But I find even greater success to come when I don't only have consequences, but I also have rewards for when they do what I want them to do. Okay. Because I feel like I grew up in a culture where if you did the right thing, nobody said anything because that's what you're supposed to do. Okay. But kids really respond well to that pat on the back when they do what they're supposed to do. And, rather than to lean toward fear of being afraid of listening to you because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them if they don't listen, you have to have that in place. But I've noticed that they'll perform well for me even more in order to get that reward that they want. And I'm not talking about necessarily monetary reward or some kind of toy or something like that, although you may decide, depending on what it is, that that's what you want to do. Okay, so you have to have consequences and you have to have rewards. And what I've learned is that I have to reward and praise my kid like 10 times more than I jump on the consequence and jump on the rebuke and the reprimand when they don't do what they're supposed to do. Okay, so laying down that kind of environment, I believe, is a rich situation for your kid to thrive in. So the first thing I'm going to say about those consequences and those rewards, though, is that you need to make that plan ahead of time. Okay. It's really stressful in the moment when the kid doesn't want to do what you want them to do, for you to decide what you're going to do. And what ends up happening, at least what ends up happening for me, is I'll have one bag of trick, one trick. Oh, you can't, no TV. You know what I'm saying? That'll be my one trick, and I'll apply. You dropped you know, you threw your pencil across the room. No TV. You know, you slapped your sister across the face. No TV. You set the house on fire. No TV. Like, you have to have, you know, the punishment has to match what they've done, and you have to have more than one trick up your sleeve. And so in order to be successful with that, you have to make your plan ahead of time. That's why I'm glad I'm releasing this video today on a Saturday, so that you have all weekend to think about this, so that Monday you will show up with your game plan in place. So what I want you to do first is to sit down and think, when little Johnny, when little Ebony is not listening, what are you going to do? You've already been working with them a little bit, and you've already seen the sort of things that they're not listening for. Okay. What is going to be the consequence that makes sense for you and makes sense for for your child? Okay. Because the same method of discipline may not be as effective with one child as compared to the other child. If you have a child that doesn't like to read, taking that child's books is not a good consequence for that child. Whereas if you do have a child that really loves to read, and you tell them until you're done, you can't read, that makes sense. But don't just stop there. I want you to also think about, what rewards are you going to use to reinforce when they do something good. The first reward that you should always have in your back pocket is verbal. Okay. Wow, you did a good job. Wow, you've been working for 5 minutes and focusing on what we're talking about. That's a good job. When you look through their work, draw a happy face, next to what they're doing. And if your kid is older, good job, buddy. You make me so happy that you're doing that. It blesses me so much that you've done what I've asked you to do. Verbal reward, believe it or not, means a lot to kids. Okay. But it doesn't only have to be verbal. Think about screen time, things like their phone, their iPad, their devices, their video games, their TV, even their phone, to be able to talk with their friends. When we start school, we check that stuff out. We check that stuff in. Okay. I do have some kids that like to listen to music while they're doing school, and they each have their own playlist. And so sometimes I'll allow them to have their phone with their headphones so that they could listen to their music. But we've already gotten to the point where if I give them their phone and tell them to listen to music, that's all they're doing. Like, my kids are not on YouTube secretly instead of listening to their music. I'm not saying they're perfect, but in general, I'm actually there. I'm wandering around, I'm looking in, I see what they're doing, and I don't rarely catch them doing something they're not supposed to be doing with their phone. And if I do catch them, then I'll confiscate the phone, or I'll have some kind of consequence that makes sense after I talk to them about it. Okay. So notice that in all of this, anger is not part of the equation. And what I've noticed with me is that a lot of times I feel angry because I'm not prepared and I'm caught off guard and I have to fly by the seat of my pants, and then I'm angry and frustrated that I'm in this situation. But what I've learned is that nothing good ever really comes from that anger. At first it feels good for me to release that frustration, but then ultimately my kid is angry back, and they're still not listening. They might stop for like 5 minutes, but then they're not listening. So having those consequences and those rewards, and I mentioned verbal, then you could move on to other things like, your time. Your time is a big reward for your kid, because one thing I've noticed is that my kid just wants me. Sometimes I do something elaborate, and at the end of the day, when I'm talking with them, what they really liked was the fact that they got a chance to go out and run an errand with me, and it was only them. Or I went on a bike ride with them, or I went on a walk with them, or I went in the room with just them, closed the door, and watched the movie that they chose with them. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't always have to be a gift that you bought or money that you gave them. Okay, and you can make them earn screen time. You're not going to be able to do this, and that until you do these assignments, this, that, and this. And, add in, take a shower, brush your teeth, do your hair, make your bed. There are charts on YouTube. And I've even seen on other people's channels where you can find charts, where you have a list of things you want your kid to do to earn screen time. Do you just give your kids their screens and that's it? You might want to make a change, because it's easy to default to the screen, but I noticed that, you know, emotionally, and even, you know, the social atmosphere of my house, when everybody's on their own screen, everybody's so self-focused. I find that my kids, don't tolerate each other as well, and there's a lot of bickering. And so we need to limit it, and we need to manage it somehow. But you have to have this plan up front before you start to work with them, and you also have to make sure that everybody is on the same page. If you're the dad and you're doing this, make sure your wife is on the same page. If you're the mom and you're doing this, make sure your husband is on the same page. If you're a single parent but you have a grandparent, I love grandparents, but you have a grandparent living with you, you know, they might not have the same kind of relationship when it comes to discipline with your kid that you have. So make sure that they understand your plan and that they will back you up, so that your child won't run to them when you're trying to enforce something, and they won't do the exact opposite of what you're trying to do with your child. The next thing I'm going to say is be creative about how you work. Okay. Remember that kids learn differently. You have kids that need to see something to understand what's going on. We call those visual learners. We have kids that, yes, they can sit and listen to you explain everything that you're trying to teach them, and they will get it. Those are auditory learners. But then you have kids that kind of need to move around. They need to interact with what they're learning. You know what I'm saying? They need to do something physical. For some kids, it's enough for them to just have something like a stress ball that they're squeezing, or a Rubik's Cube that they can move around, or they might need to stand. Okay. I have found my kids doing school all over the house, on the steps, laid up across the floor, on the couch, in their bed. Okay. Some kids need noise, some kids need quiet. You know what I'm saying? You really need to observe your child, talk to your child, and figure out what it is they need to work best. Some kids need sunlight. For a long time, we did school down here in the basement, because all my books are here. There's a carpet. I always had babies. It was easier for me to manage the babies and their toys crawling around on the floor than it was for me to work upstairs. But when my husband started working from home and we had to move upstairs, I noticed a general improvement in my mood and my kids' mood, because upstairs there's all this light, all this natural sunlight. We have a lot of artificial light down here, but I noticed that we all work better when we had more light. So pay attention to that. But then some kids like to be in a cave. Okay. So I think it's important to know what kid you have, and your homeschool. You're not doing a classroom at home. So you don't have to sit, they don't have to sit like robots in front of desks. They don't have what the way they do their work doesn't have to look like what it looks like when they're actually in a physical building that's a school. The last thing I really want to talk about is understanding your child's attention span. I think it's easier for us to understand attention span as it relates to age. I think most people understand, that like your little 3-year old or your little 4-year old is not going to sit for an hour, while you try to teach them math. Okay. I think everybody understands that. And, or maybe you don't. If you don't understand that, with like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, I'd be trying to work with them in like 10-minute segments on one thing. And then I would try to find a way to change it up. And I would incorporate moving around with that. So with my super young kids, if we were working with math, yes, we would be filling out worksheets, but I would also be trying to do things like have them, counting things, counting toys, counting, you know, even things that you have in your kitchen. Count these spoons. You know what I'm saying? Count, do physical applications to what they're doing with the worksheets, and keep it short, okay, because their attention span is brief. Keep it short, and keep your explanation brief, and keep your explanation as simple as possible. And if you don't know how to do that, YouTube is a wonderful resource. Whatever topic you're trying to do, you know Google, you know addition for kids or something, not, or plug that into the search engine of YouTube, you know teaching my child to add, or addition, or whatever, and watch some of those short videos and see what kind of language those people are using to explain, an idea to a child of that age, so that when you're trying to explain something to your kid, your language is not so elevated that they don't understand what you're saying, and you're not so long-winded that you just lose their attention. So if you know that you have to break it up into smaller parts, then you have to have a plan for that in advance. Don't only plan when you're going to work with them on an academic activity, also plan breaks into that as well. Sometimes we just want to get it done. We just want to get through the packet here, fill out these 10 sheets. But that takes too long, and it's too much for the really young kids. But don't stop there. This is what I was getting to when I first started talking about this. It's not only young kids that might have, a short attention span, okay? Your older kids may have a shorter attention span than you might expect, okay? And they might have also boxed learning, okay? In their mind, they might be thinking of learning and having to buckle down and sit still as something that they do when they get up and they go to that building, their school. And home is a place where I just chill and relax, okay? So a lot of times when families are transitioning from, their kids being in public or private school to homeschooling, there's a period of time that they go through called unschooling. Where the kid makes the shift from trying to learn in a school building to learning at home. We ain't got time for that. We just got thrown into the deep end because of this situation that we're in. But if you understand that this is a natural process that's to be expected, I think it can help to kind of calm down your frustrations a little bit. They're not used to this, you guys. And so if they're not used to this, you have to be flexible. Okay? You have to be flexible. So they have to sit down with you and understand that we are making this shift. None of us want to be here, but we're going to make the best of it. And this has to be done. This is the expectation for you to finish out the school year. Okay, it's hard, but as a parent, I'm going to also put in a little bit of grace and a little bit of flexibility in realizing that I'm not going to make you sit here for 4 hours until you get through everything without thinking through what the breaks will look like. Okay, so you'll have to gauge this with your child. But there's a method called the Pomodoro method that I used a lot with my teens, um, just to help them to be more productive with their work. And with that method, the kid would work for 20 minutes. Okay, you're only committing to 20 minutes. Yes, this is a lot of work that we have to get through, but you're going to be overwhelmed if you think about everything you have to do all the time. The way to get through this whole pile of work is to attack it one task at a time. And the only thing you have to think about, stay in the moment. The only thing you have to think about is the next 20 minutes you're committing it to. So I would break up their school day into 20-minute blocks. And in between each 20-minute block is like a 10-minute break. 10 minutes is a long time, you guys. Okay. And we would use timers to do this exactly. Now, with the Pomodoro method, it was so cute. There was a little Apple timer, and then when it's done, it goes ding. But you could use your phone or whatever you want to enforce the timing. And what they found with this method is that because you're only committing to those 20 minutes, you can be more productive and it's not as overwhelming, and your reward is coming. That 10-minute break, is coming. Okay. And so you can give your kids some autonomy in this, especially if you have older kids, to choose what subjects they're going to work on and in what order, and break it up like that, and then take a nice long lunch break, and then get back to work again in the afternoon. Okay, and little by little by little, always praising what they've gotten done. Always letting them know you're available for questions. If you don't know, tell them you don't know. You don't have to know. Even the teacher doesn't know everything. I myself, teach high school literature and history, and middle school English. Okay. And so even though I'm the teacher, there are times when there are things that I don't know. I feel like the most important gift we can give to our kids is to help them understand. I'm not up here teaching because I know everything. You know, that's not why I'm teaching. But learning is an ongoing, lifelong process. I may not know it right now, but I know how to figure it out. I know how to go learn it so that I can answer your question. And sometimes, even the process of going together with your kid to figure out what the answer of something is can be a lesson, you guys, can be a lesson. And be prayerful, okay? God is here to help you to know what to do, in the moment. Okay. And so I'm constantly praying. He's constantly talking to me. He's constantly showing me things. And there are so many moments that go beyond the actual schoolwork that we're doing. I call those teachable moments, like life lessons that they learn. And then he even speaks to me and teaches me stuff for me. You know what I'm saying? Through this process. And so in a lot of ways, I think this is really exciting. Don't forget, nobody loves your kid more than you, and you've been gifted with this time. Okay. And I think with a plan, you could avoid being completely overwhelmed by it. And even if you don't achieve 100% success, you guys, 70% success is good. 70% success is pretty good. Okay. So give them grace and give yourself grace to be able to make it through all of this. Okay. So if you guys have any further questions, let's keep the conversation going. If there are some tips I didn't mention that you have, please put it in the comments down below. Be blessed.